Well, war in Europe has brought Conservative and Labour MPs together in condemning Putin's actions, and I'm delighted to be joined in the studio now by Lord Vernon Coaker, Shadow Defence spokesperson for the Labour Party. Vernon, there has been a dramatic escalation. How do we respond in the West?
Well, I think continue what we've been doing and talk to the Ukrainians about whether there is more equipment, more military equipment that they need, more machinery, all of those sorts of things. And that's what the government have been doing. And alongside that, and they've had our full support in doing that. And of course, alongside the military support in terms of equipment, not troops, but in terms of the equipment, maybe there's more that we can do and we'll respond accordingly. And then alongside that, of course, the sanctions, which we see this morning and yesterday have started to bite. There's more to be done with that. And I know the government are going to come forward with further measures in terms of properties in London owned, hidden by Russian oligarchs. We need to expose that, and the government are coming forward with that. So the sanctions, the international alliances that are going on, the support for Ukraine itself. So all of that, and we need to do it as quickly as possible, but certainly no effort will be spared, and we'll support the government in the actions that they're taking.
Are we restricted in the sense that however tough we are talking, there are limits on what we can do, because we do not want to start World War III. We do not want to start a nuclear war. Well,
the limits we've placed are about not having troops on the ground. We heard the Defence Secretary yesterday saying about we couldn't enforce a no-fly zone because that would bring British fighter jets or NATO fighter jets in direct confrontation, potentially with Russian fighter jets. But we shouldn't. I mean, in terms of what we're doing a huge amount, and we'll do more if we need to in terms of that military equipment, in terms of the sanctions that are being imposed upon Russian oligarchs. And I think what we've seen and what Vladimir Putin has done, he's underestimated the unity of all of us in the rest of Europe and beyond in tackling the illegal invasion of the Ukraine that we've seen from him. And he's underestimated that. It's good to see people standing together. And of course, we'll carry on giving all the support we can to Ukraine in their efforts to resist the Russian invasion.
Are war crimes now being committed?
Well, certainly the ICC itself has said that there are worrying photographs, worrying images that have come out. Certainly if you've got a situation where children have been killed, flats, blocks of flats have been hit by missiles, there's certainly at the very least a need for it to be investigated, and that's what the ICC itself has said. But I think the important thing for all of us to say is that the ICC and others will look at what's going on. What's happening in the Ukraine, whoever is committing that is not immune from the international laws. And certainly I'm pleased that the ICC have said that they will look at whatever needs to be looked at as soon as they possibly can. And that's a good sign, I think.
The government has faced criticism over how much we're helping desperate people in terms of refugees. We know we'll be hearing from the Home Secretary in about an hour from now. And, of course, we'll bring that live to GBNews viewers. What is the Labour Party's criticism of the government when it comes to refugees?
Well, I think what we're saying is that all of us need to step up to the plate, including the UK, with respect to the millions of people, I think we just heard from the UNHCR, that are now being internally displaced. That puts a huge responsibility on nations, including the UK. And I think what worries us is the definition that the Home Secretary has used of immediate family members has been too restrictive. That needs to change. That needs to be extended. I mean, we've had situations where grandparents have not been able to come and be reunited with their family. Some of the criteria used for other family relatives is too restrictive. So that use of the word immediate needs to change. But above all, the principle, and I think the principle the British people would want, is that the British government and all of us need to recognise the responsibility that we have to support the refugees of fleeing war in the Ukraine. And I'm sure that's what the British people would want to see their government doing.
Would the Labour Party want to have any checks, any immigration checks on those countries?
Well, certainly there's always checks in terms of security, and you heard the Home Secretary talking about the need for that. Well, that always happens. Doesn't matter what rules or regulations you have with respect to immigration. There's always that sort of check. But certainly we need to be doing more. And as I said, at that point around what immediate family means has been too restrictive, and that needs to change. And certainly Yvette Cooper, as the Shadow Home Secretary, was saying that to the Home Secretary in Parliament yesterday and indeed today, and let's hope she responds to that.
Your leader, Keir Starmer, has criticised what he calls apologists for Putin in the Labour Party. What does he mean by that?
Well, I think he's not only talked about it, he's actually acted. And we saw 11 MPs, and I think it was 3, I think I'm right in saying 3 Labour peers who signed a Stop the War petition. And he was very, very quickly out saying, you either withdraw your names or you're going to lose the whip. So that's action, not just words. And he was very clear about that. And all of those people, without exception, withdrew their names. So I think that speaks volumes for his attitude. And again, you at the Parliamentary Labour Party spoke of
last night, the meeting of all
MPs and peers. He was very clear about saying to them that we stand with the government on this. There's no room within the Labour Party for apologists for what Putin is doing, and he was very clear about that, and I fully support him in what he said.
Do you think it's a widespread view, not just on the bench as green or perhaps red too, but is it a sentiment that is amongst the Labour Party membership too?
No, I don't think so on this. I think, I mean, if we look at the history of the Labour Party and the Labour movement, after the Second World War, we established the nuclear deterrent. We were at the forefront of establishing NATO. So we have a proud tradition in the Labour movement. So I don't think it's widespread. But what I do think was important was that the leader of the Labour Party in Keir Starmer turned around and said, this is not widespread, but I'm not having a situation where a sovereign, independent nation is invaded by somebody else in Europe, something we thought had been confined to the dustbin of history. There is no prevarication on that. This is absolutely, we are opposed to it, and as a party and as a movement, we're united against it.
And just to look at the end game here, of course, everyone's talking tough. Militarily, Putin is acting tough. Actually, what everyone wants is for a breakout of peace. Is that fantasy? Can it happen?
No, it's not fantasy. At some point, there will be some sort of agreement, some sort of settlement, some sort of after what's happened now. But I think what people will want to know and what people will want to see is that whatever the future holds, it sees a reassertion of the principles on which peace in Europe has been established over the last, or since the end of the Second World War. That's an international rules-based order in which people comply to the rules that exist. And territorial integrity, self-determination, sovereignty are respected. And look, this is not only an issue for Europe. Across the world, as we've seen from countries in Africa and beyond, have said this is important because we can't have somebody acting as an autocrat in the way they are and just taking the action they are and invading the territory of another sovereign nation. This is, of course, something that matters to Europe. And I think what people want to see is a fair outcome for the Ukrainian people and one that reasserts the rules-based order on which the whole system in Europe and beyond has to be based.
Should we be worried about nuclear war? Are you worried about nuclear war?
Well, I think it was it was chilling, wasn't it, when Vladimir Putin said he's going to put that up to move it to another level. But the Defence Secretary said yesterday, and I think I'm quoting him correctly, and said these are words, a rhetoric rather than meaningful threats as such. But of course it's chilling. Of course nobody wants to hear that. But I think what we should be worried about and what we need to be worried about is how we support the Ukrainian people. It's clearly not going to plan. We clearly need to continue to do all we can to support the Ukrainian people with military equipment where necessary, with humanitarian aid, and also support the countries, the NATO members that are around the Ukraine, and give a clear message to the President Putin that he's crossed the line and we're not prepared to accept it.
Very clear. Vernon Coaker, Labour's defence spokesperson, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good to see you.